Are you thinking about moving to Mexico? Well, we were in your shoes just 6 years ago and we chose to weigh our options with a simple pros and cons list. After exploring several destinations such as Puerto Morelos, Playa del Carmen, Guadalajara, we chose Merida. Now, 5 years later, I'm sharing my updated pros and cons of living in Merida, Mexico to help folks that might be considering moving to Merida as your new home. Let's get it. All right, let's go ahead and get the cons out of the way. The first con for me would be travel options to Merida. It takes at least 7 to 12 hours for us to travel back from Merida to the United States, to Atlanta in particular. Now, there are only a couple of international direct flights into Merida or from Merida. You can fly United from Houston, or you can fly American from Miami or sometimes Dallas, depending on the season. For a brief time, we had a flight with Delta that was direct to Atlanta, which was incredible, but they killed that just after 4 short months. They killed that flight. And the reason they said they killed that flight was due to the lack of marketing budget. So hopefully they'll get the budget with this new administration that starts October 1st, and they'll bring that flight back. Speaking of limited travel options, number 2 on my list is the distance away from family and friends. Now, this is to be expected. We didn't move to Merida with all of our kids. We have adult kids that are still back in Atlanta, and it gets especially difficult for us when we miss significant events like weddings and funerals, and even just family dinners. My son recently had a family dinner in his new house, and all of my kids were there and my mom was there, and it was just a bittersweet time for us. It was nice to see them all gather at my son's new house, but it was bittersweet seeing that we couldn't actually make it back. Number 3 is the fact that you can't drink the water. One of the first things that I notice when I get home is the fact that I can now drink the water and I can brush my teeth. So things like ice out of the refrigerator or water out of the refrigerator is totally possible when you are back in, the United States. Here, even my wife and my daughter use the tap water for brushing their teeth. But I've had enough fights with Montezuma's Revenge, the BGZs, or whatever you want to call it, to know that it's not worth the risk. Number 4 is the access to the latest technology. This would be my number 4 con on my list, because tech here is expensive and it's usually available much later than in the US. A good example is the iPhone 16 was just announced. It's going on pre-sale in the US on Friday, I believe it is. But here in Mexico, it'll be at least 2-3 weeks, maybe a couple months before that iPhone 16 is available. Not to mention that iPhone 16 will be 17 to 20% more than in the US. Number 5 on my cons list would be cultural norms. Unfamiliarity with how things work are just the standard in a new place, right? It doesn't matter if you move from New York to Atlanta or from California to Atlanta, there's gonna be an unfamiliarity with how things get done. One of the biggest cultural norms that's here that I see that is unexpected is the fact that there's a very high prevalence of people ghosting you when you're looking for services. People will engage with you when you say, hey, I would like to hire you for such and such, or I need this type of service done. Then they'll just stop responding. They don't want to tell you no. So that is one of the things that is normal here in Merida and I guess in Mexico in general, and it makes it a little more difficult to get things done. And in fact, I will say that just people telling you no outright is definitely not a cultural norm. People will kind of soften the blow or soften the response to not say no, but in fact, they really mean no, and I think they feel it like it's somewhat disrespectful or inappropriate for them to say no, and therefore they'll give you the runaround instead of just a straight, direct answer. Number 6 on my list of cons would be the communication barrier. Now, living in an area that is not a popular international tourist site means that you need to learn the language faster. You're gonna need to learn Spanish much quicker than you would if you moved to Playa del Carmen or Puerto Morelos or any area that receives a lot of international tourists. This isn't a negative, but rather just a fact. It's important that you learn Spanish as quickly as possible. Now, it can be difficult, particularly when you're in stressful situations when you don't read or write Spanish, or when you have to handle official business like immigration or getting licenses or tags on your car and things of that nature. I can tell you that your experience will be greatly improved when you learn how to speak Spanish. 7 on my list is just finding a place of worship, right? This is one of the areas that I truly miss being from the States. And it's just like, missing your kids or what have you. Having that place that you gather with familiar folks is an extremely important part of my life. And I haven't found the place that I'm looking for here in Merida. So right now I've had the excuse of having a language barrier. I came here on a church mission trip where I spoke no language, but I was able to be fulfilled. So I am actually looking for a church home, and I'm looking for a Spanish church home. These next couple of items can kind of go either way, but I'm gonna list it as a con because I hear a lot of complaints from other people about this particular issue. And number 8 on my list is the food here in the Yucatan. Let me explain. The food here is very regional. It's very different from most of the cuisine in the rest of Mexico, right? So we have real tacos, but not Tex-Mex. So we don't have, the tacos with the hard shell, like Taco Bell, that kind of thing. These are real Mexican tacos like you would get in Mexico City and other places. But a lot of the food here is either pork-based or turkey-based. Those are the two things that they actually grow and they export from Yucatan, both turkeys and pork. So a lot of the dishes are based on pork or turkey, and if you don't eat pork, that could be a problem for you. Now, it also takes a little time to learn and appreciate the flavors and the uniqueness of the dishes here in Yucatan. The good news is it's not hard to find American style food when you want to just lean on what you're familiar with. There are tons of American chain restaurants like P.F. Chang's, TGI Fridays, Chili's, and the list goes on and on, from fast food, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's just opened up here. Church's Chicken, which is some of the best chicken, I think, fried chicken fast food that I've ever eaten. There's just a difference in the quality of food here. Even when it comes to fast food, the food is better. The one thing that I would say is very, very noticeable about the food, there are not a lot of vegetable options. Much of our vegetable intake is being replaced with fruits. So we eat a lot of fruits, bananas, and just strawberries, fresh fruit, etc., etc. So I think a lot of our fruit and vegetables category or quadrant comes from fresh fruit. Speaking of food and culture in the Yucatan, 2 friends of mine, the foodie flash packer and experiencer, have set up a cultural food tour of Yucatan that's happening in January. This is a luxury food tour of the Yucatan Peninsula. Russell is in the process of becoming a sommelier, and he's a local expert on the Yucatan cuisine. And Nathan is an international food blogger who travels the world writing about food and all of its deliciousness. If you're planning a trip to the Yucatan in January, you want to check out this luxury food tour experience that's going to happen January 5th through the 12th. And for MexitPlanners, they've extended the early bird discount until September 24th. So be sure to go and check it out and let them know that MexitPlans Monty sent you. I plan to join these guys on this excellent food tour, so check it out, and I'll leave the link in the description notes below. Number 9 on my list is a con for some, but it's gonna be the heat. The heat in Merida is way hotter than you think. I don't care if you come from Miami, from Houston, from anywhere else. If you don't come from the Yucatan Peninsula, you are not prepared for this heat. Now, it's only hot and disrespectful for like a couple of months, like April, May-ish time frame. It gets extremely hot. This May was the hottest that I think I've ever experienced here in Merida. But the heat is something you can deal with. So it's not so much a con for me. In fact, my wife loves the heat, but it can cause other problems such as power outages. When it's so hot, when people are blasting their ACs and using their ACs all the time, it can cause power outages, which can affect your livelihood if you work online, things of that nature. And the heat also causes food items to spoil faster. Vegetables or fruits ripen super quick when it's really hot. The heat is a factor that you have to be prepared. Again, we're living in the tropics, we're living closer to the equator. It's just a fact of life, but I'm putting it on the con list just in case you're not ready for the heat. I will also add to that the humidity. This is a place where you get out of the shower sweating. Speaking of the humidity, number 10 on my list is gonna be the difficulty with allergies. because this place is very, very humid, mold grows quickly. And for them, moho or mold is simply just a fact of life, right? They wipe it off, they spray it, and they keep it moving. It's not like it is in the States where if you have a mold in an area, you're gonna like tear down the whole house, blow up the whole house. Here, it's just a matter of wiping the wall or wiping wherever the area the mold grows and trying to remediate and find out why that area is getting moist. So it's not as big of a deal, but it can cause you problems with respiratory issues and illness. I think asthma is one of the highest rates here in Yucatan than it is in any other place in Mexico because of that. Final con that I will leave you with, which is number 11, is gonna be just insects / wildlife, right? So I'm gonna tell you, if you're moving here, be prepared for the mosquitoes, cockroaches, ants, geckos, and iguanas. Those are just a fact of life of living in the tropic. We have all of those. It's super easy to take care of it. You just have your house fumigated several times a year, like 3 to 4 times a year is normal, every couple of months. But mosquitoes are something you have to deal with every day. Like you put on mosquito repellent or mosquito lotion or whatever. It's just something you're gonna deal with. There are more species of ants, I think, here in Yucatan than I've ever experienced in my life. So they're the big leafcutter ants all the way down to the small sugar ants that you will never see, but you'll find them in all of your stuff if it's not properly sealed. So just be prepared, right? You're gonna deal with more bugs, more things that you are not familiar with, probably coming from a different climate and a different place. Also, if you live closer to the jungle, you have to compete with snakes. I'm talking about boa constrictors and things that just live out in the jungle. Tarantulas, scorpions, and there are some things that'll actually kill you. So all of those things are in play if you live close to, you know, the nature, right? If we're in the city, I haven't seen a snake here, but I know they exist. I've seen tarantulas walking down the street, and of course we've had scorpions in our house. That's why we routinely spray. So spray every 3 to 4 months and wear lots of repellent during the rainy season to avoid mosquito bites and mosquito-borne illnesses. Join me on Saturday the 28th for our next Roadmap to Expat free webinar. I've decided to push the start of the Roadmap to Expat coaching program to the beginning of next year, which means we have more time to prepare and learn. Until then, I'll be hosting a series of free webinars packed with valuable insights for everyone considering moving to Mexico. Don't miss this opportunity to get your questions answered and join the free community. Let's start planning today. All right, we've talked about all the negative things, so let's get to the list of pros for living in Merida, Mexico. Number 1 on my list is its location, right? The location of the city of Merida and the Yucatan Peninsula is clutch. We are 25 minutes to the Gulf of Mexico, which means the beach is right there, and I can go to the beach every day if I wanted to. And we're only 3.5 hours from the Caribbean, which is, you know, where most people want to be on the Riviera Maya. This location for us was ideal because it makes it relatively close to Atlanta. From Cancun to Atlanta is only 2.5 hours by plane, and we're 3.5 hours. So theoretically, if everything ran super smoothly, we could be there in 6 hours, which is very good for living outside of the US. And it's not overdeveloped as of yet. There's super development happening right now, but it's not overdeveloped like the other side of the Gulf. So the beaches are still pristine. There's not a lot of high rise or condos or things of that nature. It's not overpopulated, and it's definitely a good place to go. Number 2 on my list, and this is really important, this is why we chose Merida over Guadalajara, is just the safety. This is the 2nd safest city in North America. And one of the things that you notice here is just, it's hard to quantify, but you notice how safe things feel. I'll show you a clip in this video. I was at the coffee shop just the other day, actually writing this list, and a gentleman got up, he had 2 cell phones, his wallet, he got up and left those things on the table at the coffee shop. Now, in what city in the US would you dare get up, go to the bathroom, and leave your cell phones and things of that nature on the table at the coffee shop? Not a lot. So it just goes to show there's just a level of security that you get here. I often go to the ATM at all times of the night and not have any concern about anything happening. Things I just would not do in the US in just about any city I do here. My wife goes running early in the morning or late at night, and I'm okay with that because there's no issue, there's no safety issue. And the biggest thing is I don't have to worry about gun violence, just random gun violence at movie theaters or schools and things of that nature. Number 3 on my list of pros for living in Merida, Mexico is just healthier food. There are no preservatives in the meats. If you buy meat today, you need to cook it today or tomorrow, because after the 3rd or 4th day, even refrigerated, it's going to spoil. There's just no preservatives. The food here is healthier. Eggs are natural and normally located by the bread in the supermarkets. Milk is on the shelf. And there are lots and lots of delicious fruits that taste way better. They're sweeter. The strawberries, the berries, the mangoes, all those things are just much sweeter, and they taste way better than the stuff that you get in the US. You don't realize how unhealthy the food is in the US until you move to another country and everything just tastes way better. Number 4 on my list of pros to living in Merida, Mexico is the sunny weather. I don't know the exact number, but I'm gonna say that it's sunny probably 350 days a year or more. I can't even think of, 10 days where I know that it's rained all day, right? Unless there's a tropical storm approaching from the Gulf or a hurricane or something like that, it's typically sunny at some point during the day. My gauge is normally, even if it rains in the afternoon during rainy season, I know that in the mornings it's gonna be sunny. So that is one of the things that I love about here, is that you're always gonna have opportunities to do whatever you wanna do outside in the sun. That also contributes to the heat and the humidity, but for me, I look at the bright side and I take the sunny weather over gloomy weather all year long. Speaking of sunny weather, that leads to point number 5, which is my lifestyle of fitness. Because it's always sunny, I know that if I get up early, I can always do exercise. I can always go running or cycling or whatever early in the mornings, typically because it's gonna be sunny most mornings. Like I said, I can't think of many days where I've had to deviate from my workout schedule because of the weather, because it's not been sunny or it's raining or something like that. So that is one of the things that I love about living here, is that there's just a lifestyle of fitness. And because of the fact that the weather is so cooperative, you see people exercising every day, right? You see people running, cycling, doing whatever, and there's always some type of an event. Almost every week here, there's a 5K or a half marathon or a cycling event. Mountain biking is really big here. Triathlon teams are really big here. There's all sorts of events that happen because the weather is so conducive to a lifestyle of fitness. So number 6 is a better quality of life. My life in the US was very good. We had a very good lifestyle, but here, it's not uncommon to have help to help manage different areas of your life to free you up to do the things that you do best. For instance, you can have a chef come in for a very reasonable price to make food for you every day. Many folks have housekeepers, nannies, gardeners, and pool maintenance folks, just to name a few of the services that people are able to hire in order to free up their time to do other things. So a better quality of life is easily had here living in Mexico. Number 7 on my list of pros of living in Merida, Mexico is affordable insurances. Now, when I talk about insurance, I'm talking about health insurance, car insurance, and even house insurance as an example. To give you an example of what I mean by affordable insurance, our car insurance for one car for the year is $450 for the entire year. The other thing that is super affordable here is health insurance, private health care. We pay for a family of 3 about $3,200 per year for private healthcare insurance. And that covers things like major medical expenses. So if we were to be hospitalized, have an accident while working out or whatever, those things would be covered. Our hospital care would be covered at the best hospitals in Merida or in Mexico. Speaking of healthcare, number 8 is better healthcare. I can tell you that out of all the experiences I've had in my 49 plus years of life, that I've received the best healthcare I've ever had here in Merida, Mexico. I'll give you an example. Whenever I go see my primary care physician or my doctor, She spends as much time as needed. She makes sure that she understands what's going on with me, anything that's changed. I recently just had a physical. We went through my lab work. We went through some other tests that she explained. It was just amazing. And then we were able to switch up some things and just really have a better outlook on what's going on with my body. So having good healthcare, I've never had better healthcare. There's never a rush, and not to mention that my doctor generally sees me in the evenings, like 7:30 p.m. is when I go typically for appointments. And those appointments are scheduled via WhatsApp, and we're constantly in communication via WhatsApp throughout, the year or what have you. So just the experience of having a personal relationship with a physician that isn't in and out in 15 minutes is unbelievable. And everybody that I know that's received healthcare here received better healthcare in Mexico here than they did in the US. It's hard to believe because the propaganda in the US will tell you that the healthcare system there is the best, but it is not. It's broken. And you see that when you get affordable healthcare, better quality of treatment, and the availability of medicines like pharmaceuticals is, you just go to a pharmacy and you can get anything but narcotics or antibiotics pretty easily. Speaking of better healthcare, I'm gonna say number 9 is better dentistry. I had an issue this week where I needed to see a dentist, so I emailed or I texted on WhatsApp my daughter's dentist, and they scheduled me an appointment for the next day at 1:30 p.m. In between time, she issued an order to go get some x-rays, so I went to the place to get a panoramic x-ray of my mouth for $17.50 without an appointment. I just showed up, told them what I needed, paid the $17.50 US dollars. It was 350 pesos for a panoramic x-ray. 20 minutes later, I walked out of there with the x-ray that they had already emailed to the doctor and sent me an email. A couple hours later, I went to the doctor's appointment, or I went to the dentist appointment. I had my appointment, and it's a wisdom tooth that I have that needs to be removed. When I was like 16, they removed 3 of the 4 wisdom teeth and left 1. So when I went in, the doctor's like, yep, we definitely need to take that out. We can do it right now. I was like, oh, hold on a second. I'm not ready for having the aftercare of having my wisdom tooth removed. I got things to do, but let's schedule that later down the line. So for $30, I had a dentist visit. They issued me some antibiotics. They gave me some other medicine for pain, or, wrote down some instructions for pain. And here I am back in the saddle. All of this happened within a matter of, a few hours, honestly. And I didn't need to wait. I could have actually had that tooth pulled out and not been able to make this video today. So the moral of the story is the healthcare, the dentistry, all of those things are much, much better. Number 10 on my list is the family-centered culture here in Latin America. I would say this applies to Mexico, this applies to Colombia, or any other place. It's all about the family. And you generally see services, particularly here in Merida, we have at most of the restaurants in the north, there is not uncommon to have playroom nannies where the kids can go off to the playroom and there's a person in that playroom at the restaurants watching after the kids, right? So that's very, very common in the north of Merida at many of the restaurants here. It's actually one of the things that sold us on moving here was the fact that everything is so family centered. But on Sundays, they shut down the main street, which is Paseo de Montejo here in Merida, and they do a thing called the BC Ruta, which is just full of families enjoying and riding their bikes and skating and things of that nature up and down the BC Ruta. So I'll put some video just from the BC Ruta so you can see what I mean by family-centered culture. And I think that really leads into my 11th point, which is my 11th pro for living in Merida, is you see respectful kids, teenagers, right? One of the things that you don't see, and I know I'm immediately home in Atlanta when I see people with their pants sagging and just people wilding out and being disrespectful teens or even adults. Here, you don't see that. In the malls, you don't see kids with their pants sagging. You don't see teenagers talking to adults any kind of way. I really very rarely see any type of disrespect towards anybody. Number 12 on my list of pros is affordable private education, right? So my daughter goes to a private school here and we pay about $4,000 per year for her to attend that private school, and that includes, of course, her education, but it also includes her books, her supplies. One of the neat things here is that the parents are super involved, so they take up a fund at the beginning of the year to pay for all of the teachers' birthdays and gifts that they're gonna give the teachers. They do a ton of events for the kids, Children's Day and just parties in general, and that's all taken care of at the beginning of the year. So you pay, you know, some fee, I think it's like 60 or 80 bucks for that fund, and it takes care of all of those things. Not to mention that extracurricular activities, this year my daughter decided to do 2 extracurricular activities. She's doing dance and chess, and those, it's like $50 for the entire year for her participation in those activities. And they have a whole list that they put out from soccer to swimming to track and field, basketball, all sorts of things that they could do. And that goes all the way through high school. So the education system here, private education, is incredible. We pay about $4,000 for the entire year with all of those fees and all those things included. And that's, you know, one of the things that we love about living in Merida. The other thing is when she graduates from high school, she's gonna go to undergrad here for sure, because a university education at the state level is about $1,500 per year. Let me say that again. A university education at the state level is about $1,500 US per year. Now, if you go to a private school, that could run you anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000, which is, you know, at the high end, but nobody's going broke or taking out student loans or any of those things to get a private education here. So that is one of the nice things about it. And of course, they have professionals. They have doctors, lawyers, they have all the professions we have in the United States, and yet they somehow managed to graduate without a mountain of student debt. Number 13 on my list, and this is a huge bonus. This was not something we expected, and it wasn't here when we moved here 5 years ago, but it's definitely a draw for many folks, is the community that's been built here in Merida. I would say that Merida has one of the largest, if not the largest, community of African American families. And that's a new phenomenon. I think since we've been here, you know, when we first got here, we kind of knew everybody, right? And now there are so many people that we don't know. We recently just went to an event this past weekend where there were probably, you know, 60 families or 68 people in attendance, I think was the RSVP list. There were tons of kids, tons of families. I knew most of those folks, but there were some folks that I didn't know. But and that's just a small portion of the number of families that's here. That was, you know, what was at this particular event. So it's really nice to have that community of people that share the same cultural background and traditions. We do things like Kwanzaa events during the holidays. There's a Juneteenth gathering planned for this year. We've held a family reunion cookout one year. We do all sorts of things. So it is important to you know, also be able to share resources for like black hair products and other services like barbers and what have you. So it's just cool to have that community, and that's a bonus. I guess it's, you know, when I think about the communities in Atlanta, you know, in Forest Park and South Atlanta, there's a large Latino community. And I guess that's, you know, kind of similar for us here in Mexico. But it's definitely better to be integrated into the larger culture, but it's nice to have folks that are familiar with your culture and also your background here as well. I would love to know what you think about this list and what you would add to the list of pros and cons. Leave me comments below and let me know your thoughts. As you can see, the pros far outweigh the cons, and when it comes to living in Merida, I can honestly say that some of those cons might have even turned out to be hidden pros. Living here in Merida, Mexico has truly transformed my mental and physical health, and I'm excited to continue building a life in this vibrant community for many years to come. If you're curious about what life in Mexico is really like, or want more tips on how to make the move to Mexico, make sure to check out the videos over here. And until next time, MexitPlans Monty, I'm out.